you know me. I wasn't necessarily a Trump guy. I wasn't not a Trump guy. I wasn't like a hater.
Yeah, you were not a Trump guy, Jake, when on the first election. You were not Trump.
Well, I mean,
who'd you vote for?
I went third party in the 2016 election.
2016. That makes you not Trump, right?
Yeah, right. But I mean, like, I don't want to say I was a never Trumper guy. Like, there's the people that literally didn't understand Trump. I understood Trump very well. I understood what he was doing. My problem with Trump was he was not a principled conservative. All right. And I would still argue in his first term he wasn't. But I did vote for him in 2020, mostly because of just how bad the deep state was and what they were doing. The final straw was the killing of the Hunter Biden story. That was like, screw you guys. This is the biggest middle finger to them is voting for Trump. Even though in many regards I didn't think Trump earned my vote. I was much more bold and excited about voting for Trump in 2024. I've stated multiple times on the show why, even though I'm still critical of Donald Trump, and I probably will always be because I think everyone should be. Here's my post, and I want to discuss this with you guys because, Andy, you've actually had contracts with Trump's campaign in the past. You've been you were probably a pretty early on guy with Trump, but then Jesse, your name is MAGA Jesse, so we all know where you stand. And I like surrounding myself by MAGA people because great people. This is what I wrote. I think this was on Friday. Trump has the potential of being one of our best presidents. He's on the cusp of ending the Ukraine war, slashing intrusive federal government, getting Arab countries to pitch in with Gaza, improve child health problems, reverse radical left cult policies, and fix our border. This is only week 4. He's far from perfect. I don't agree with all his policies or how he does some things, but results talk. These are monumental issues we've been facing for the last several years, and there's a guy in office actually doing something about them. I pray he is successful. Let's go to Brad Ganser here real quick.
Yeah, we got a $5 Rumble rant from Brad Ganser. He says, Jake, your biggest gripe was Trump's inability to cut the budget. How is he doing now?
Fair point. And that's why I'm saying, like, literally for the first time in my life, Andy, and you've known me, we've been in politics. I mean, going back to doing radio in college together, right? I have never even thought that government was going to be cut. I never believed in these people. I was a big Ron Paul supporter because I'm like, man, if that guy stood a chance of getting elected, which he stood a very small chance, I'm like, he would actually do something. Well, like Elon Musk and Donald Trump seem to be like Ron Paul on steroids right now. I'm loving it.
Hold on. Keep in mind, don't put him in the Hall of Fame yet because in that same budget bill, they're raising the debt ceiling. And why are they raising the debt ceiling? I mean, if you're going to cut the money, you've got the money to pay your loan, right? So I'm cautious as to why they're going about it this way. I still don't trust the House Republicans on this.
Oh, right.
I just don't, because as soon as I saw that the debt ceiling was being raised, I thought that this isn't necessary. So why are you doing it? If you're actually going to cut, why are you going to raise the debt ceiling? For those of you that don't know, the debt ceiling, when they raise it, that just is Congress authorizing the Treasury to sell bonds to whoever wants to buy them, because that's our way of printing money, essentially, without printing it. And China buys it, and Japan buys the most of it next to the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. But that's all it is.
Mostly Americans. But once again, I'm not going to like opine on just the House Republicans here for a second, because quite frankly, all of them have to lead Trump, right? At this point, my statement is that Trump might go down as the best president. And it's been 4 weeks, but I can't imagine more monumental wins. I'm not saying he's flawless. There are some issues I have, but even one of my biggest issues was his statement about Gaza, which at this point seems to be very obviously revealing itself. He made such a crazy statement in the sense that people take him serious overseas and they don't want American soldiers in the Gaza Strip. So all of a sudden Arab nations are like, yeah, we better do something about Gaza, which no one was willing to do, right? Egypt wouldn't take the Palestinians. Jordan wouldn't take the Palestinians. Now they're like, oh, crap, we don't want America in the Gaza Strip. It's like, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. That is a massive problem to solve. And you would think, well, that's probably good enough for the first term. Nope. He's right now trying to end the Ukrainian war, and I believe it. I believe this is actually going to be ended. And that is
were always,
go ahead,
Jake, with Gaza, there were always contingency plans that we had to go up north of the Gaza Strip, which is only about as wide as Miami, by the way. Miami's 110 miles, and the Gaza Strip is about the same. But we always had plans to flood the tunnels from the Red Sea from the north because we can get refuge up there with the mountains. And if Hezbollah, I might be wrong. It's Hezbollah up there. If they cooperated and didn't kill us, we'd be able to fortify it. And so the plan was to flood the tunnels, and then I'll just head right into Gaza and start kicking ass. And I think they believe that Trump will do that. I mean, look at the tariffs. The tariffs that he threatened on Canada and Mexico were absolutely brilliant. Because if you look at, I mean, it's either these Democrats are outright liars, or they're idiots, or they're morons, or they're Lydiatrons. I guess I'll make up a word and call them all three. But the reality is that when you're buying 85% of everything that Mexico makes and 75% of everything that Canada makes, and they're only buying a combined total of 15% of everything we make, we have huge negotiating power. And they knew he would do it. And I think that the world knows that Trump means business, as we're Biden. They just didn't ever take the guy seriously. Same with Obama. Back to the best president ever. I mean, look at who we have as conservatives that we worship for some reason. Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. I mean, really?
Well, I think it's the persona of Ronald Reagan that we like so much. I think when you divorce the policies, if you can divorce the policies, some of the policies from him, I mean, not all of them were bad, obviously, but some of them were bad. It's like
30 some odd tax increases, right?
Yeah, but you know, certainly he goes down in history as kind of like JFK in the sense, and Obama in some regards, like the character of the guy that you want. Like if you divorce the policies, obviously, of Obama, like you would say, yeah, that's kind of like the statesman, the kind of good communicator that you want in office. Obviously, you really have to divorce the policies from that guy. So I think that's in many regards as Reagan's viewed as that guy. Because remember, we were in college during the second term of George W. Bush, and I mean, my God, the guy, they all called him a moron. The guy stumbled, he couldn't speak, right? And his dad just kind of came across as like some establishment guy. So it's like really Reagan was the guy until Trump came along.
Yeah, but you can't divorce the policies, and you know that.
Well, you can, yes, right.
You know, and so, you know, if I have to go back to probably the most conservative president in my lifetime, embarrassingly, I have to say, and I go back to Carter, embarrassingly, I have to say probably Bill Clinton. And then I would go on to Trump. Now we'll see what Trump does. Trump has a chance to surpass that, but our party has been embarrassing of people that we put up as Republicans, and then, oh my gosh, we finally get a Republican in Trump. And now the world's going nuts. I mean, this is what these guys should have done all along. Every one of these Republicans that were elected should have been exactly like Trump and just did what they said they're going to do.
Yeah, I know. That's the interesting thing. The Democrats are so up in arms about this stuff. And it's like he literally campaigned on it. Like, you don't like the fact that they're actually cutting government and actually exposing the fraud, waste, and abuse. That's like what his whole campaign was about. Like going up against the deep state.
Jake, remember when government would shut down and of course, as a chief of staff, you're an essential employee, but I would always declare myself as non-essential just so that the junior staffers could work and get paid. But I always found it interesting, like if we have non-essential employees, why are they coming back to work?
Right.
You know, and that's part of this buyout that Trump is doing. We're going to get smaller through attrition. You know, there are people that this is going to be really good for and really healthy for. This is going to be people who are close to retirement, who just can't quite get there yet, but all of a sudden now they can, you know? And so it's not like the whole government's going to turn over. We're going to lose some people that are close, some lifers, some deep state people, and that's it. And that's good.
Yeah, but what I see is something so monumental. And this is why, like, I'm not just saying the best president in modern day history. I'm saying like ever. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, but it's like,
I think I have to go back to Teddy Roosevelt before it starts getting competitive. You know, and
yeah, well, Teddy would be like our kind of guy. I mean, he was a
no, I know. I'm just saying, you know, in that same breadth of leadership, you know,
I see what you're
that,
saying.
and you know, obviously the founding fathers, Washington.
No
is
one's
up there.
close to Jefferson. Nobody is close to Jefferson.
Jefferson would be my favorite president ever.
Yeah.
And I would argue that there were some that in whole, like Coolidge and stuff like that, policy-wise were preferable, but they didn't make a mark. Part of leadership is, you know, being the right guy at the right time. And, Courier agrees with me on Coolidge. But part of it is just being the right guy.
Prohibition, right? You
What's
know,
that?
he was president during Prohibition. You know, a lot of people seem to forget that he wasn't exactly the libertarian that people seem to think he was. He was more just kind of stayed out of the way of a lot of issues. So.
Well, yes, but that was pretty huge at that time frame.
Yeah,
Because there was
it's also
there was a Great Depression
A true
in
liberty guy would get in the way of the Prohibition issue and say, "What are we doing here?"
Well, hold on.
You know?
You don't need the president during an amendment, though.
Right,
Amendment
but
lives outside of the president's say. So,
well, sure, but he could fight. I don't think he ever.
well,
did.
I'm not a scholar on.
Oppose it.
Hey, I'm not a scholar on what his
I don't
position
know
was
if
on
Coolidge
prohibition.
opposed it. I'd have to look
the
into it, but
The 14th Amendment, it was Andrew Johnson. He actually campaigned against it, though he could do nothing about it, as you said, because it takes 66% in both houses and then 3/4 of the legislature. So there's nothing the president can do, but they can use their bully pulpit for that. I don't know if Coolidge did. Hey, if I can, somebody made a comment that I saw on the screen about Trump being a populist, and I just want to address that quickly. He is, but the beautiful thing about this country is our Constitution is a safeguard against total populism. If you look at history and some of the leaders that have risen to power through populism, it's not a good list. It's just not. But they didn't have a constitution to constrain them, and so Trump does.
We got Mark 108 saying Coolidge roaring 20s. I love how we have actual people in our audience that understands presidential history, and that's part of my argument on Coolidge was he got out of the way in the Great Depression of 1920, which was actually in many regards could have been as bad as the Great Depression, what we refer to the Great Depression nowadays. And my argument always is FDR screwed that and prolonged the Great Depression because of his policies. Like FDR is viewed in schools as a great president, but he was a terrible president in many regards.
The same liberals that hate him are the same ones that say Trump is saying he's going to run for a third term.
Yes.
So it's like, hold on a
They
second.
had to pass the 22nd Amendment because of FDR, who ran for 4 terms and died, like a month into his 4th term. But it's like everyone just followed the lineage of Washington and didn't run a 3rd time until freaking FDR did, right? Like to the point where he dies. I think it was like a month. It was not that long after he got inaugurated the 4th term.
You have to remember, was it Frank? Was it FDR? Yeah, it was. I just Googled it. It was Teddy Roosevelt. And who are we talking about? Which Roosevelt?
FDR, Franklin.
All right, then
Franklin
I'll shut up,
Delano.
because I was going to say, guys, wait a minute. Teddy Roosevelt did the big land grab and made everything a national park. And
Right.
But I get them confused. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Should be done by the states, obviously. But
we have Republicans.
Right. And honestly, there's worse things to do than
there's
worse things to do than giving people areas to hunt. You know, there's worse things.
Unfortunately,
than
that's not what he did. Unfortunately, he did the national park system. You can hunt there.
Preservation.
So he took some of the prime hunting grounds in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
and not just that, but the Constitution is explicitly clear on how much land the federal government can own. It's 10 miles. It's 10 miles square, which is 100 roughly.
Oh, the
miles.
Constitution says that? Where in the Constitution?
It does.
Does it? Sure about that, Andy?
I'm 100% positive it says it's 10 miles square in the Constitution.
You go find where it says that in there.
See, Andy's not wearing his hat right now, so.
Oh, I'm right on this.
Oh, are you?
I'm 100% right on it.
By the way, I'm not for the federal government owning a lot of land. By the way, obviously.
Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
What's it
to
say?
exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as made by secession of a particular state. The reason was
But you're talking about jurisdiction, aren't you? Isn't that what you just read?
They can own up to 10 miles square, because when you were looking in Philadelphia, after we had some soldiers that wanted to get paid after Revolution, and they weren't paid yet, and they came and they stormed the Capitol. I think it was it Aaron Burr who talked them off the ledge? Because I think Aaron Burr served with them. I'm not sure. But after that, they tried to call in the National Guard, but the governor declined that. So they said, we've got to have our own area. And that's how they came up with this 10-mile square area.
Okay, I'm reading it right now. Article 8.
Yeah, Brad Ganser and Terry
Article
Time
1.
both have Andy's back here.
Oh, do they?
Yep.
Yeah. And so when you have the federal government coming into sovereign states and taking land, that's a problem, because who are they to do that? We have that going on right now in Wisconsin. We have Tom Tiffany, who's normally a conservative rock star, and of course the guy from Duluth, I don't know what's his name, Stauber or whatever, signed on to it. and my rep did, and this is one of my gripes with them, they're actually taking the Apostle Islands from a state park and they're trying to make it a national park. And in that, they remove most of the hunting rights and fishing rights for white folk. Not for everybody else, but for us, they do. And I can't. Why would they take our land? Why would we be okay with that?
Right. Yeah.
By the way,
obviously,
you're
what the leftists say is that if the federal land is not there and it's given back to the states are going to sell it to the highest bidder. But obviously,
so what? That's their right.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right. Obviously, I'm just saying some people prefer there being some sort of forest and park and whatnot. But obviously, we don't want the federal government to be the ones enforcing that.
By the way,
no, and right, because they should not own land. Those powers are left to the states.
There's a really interesting thing, and I'm not a scholar enough to understand, but there's a parentheses where it says not exceeding 10 miles squared. So I'm wondering what that parentheses is. I don't think the Constitution had a parentheses there.
That's a size. Jake, right. That's the size. So 10 miles square would be the size. It's a mathematical formula.
What is the
10
math?
times 10.
No, but I'm saying in the when I look this up online, it's got in parentheses. So does the Constitution have parentheses there, or is this later added? Is that just a general understanding?
This was amended later. This was when we were already in
Philadelphia. That wasn't amended.
What?
That wasn't amended. It's not an amendment. This is Article 1, Section 8.
You're right. It was while we were writing it. That's right, because the soldiers wanted to get paid.
Mark 108 says they did not want the capital in any state. Fair point.
Yep.
Well, yeah, long story short, I agree with you on the federal government buying a bunch of land. By the way, that's the other thing is, so we're so far into debt. So it's like, all right, if you're into debt and you have trouble paying back the debt, then what is the other side of the ledger? What are the assets? If you're looking at the balance sheet, what are the assets? And the assets are, well, Yellowstone, Yosemite. What are we doing? If we got to pay down the debt, are we selling our national lands? Is that what we're doing? And so in many regards, it's like there's another problem with the national debt. So going back to my main argument is, Andy, I've never seen a real belief that we're going to cut a penny of the federal government. And all of a sudden I'm seeing, well, geez, we just cut off the workforce. We just cut like huge slashes of workforce. We're probably going to get rid of a lot of this waste, fraud, abuse. USAID, I don't know. I haven't looked today, but the website wasn't working last week. And that's a $50 billion organization. It's like it's bigger than the size of Minnesota government in 1 year. So it's like, wow, we actually have a chance of finally doing this. So yeah, I mean, you could look at historic presidencies. Washington's greatness was certainly even before he became president. But it's like, here Trump is trying to save the union, trying to save a country that literally I thought was on the verge of collapse. And that's the way I read it. And I thought, all right, well, Kamala has no solution whatsoever. Trump at least gives us a chance, but I didn't think he had a high chance of actually solving the issue because I looked at his first term. And quite frankly, now I just look at his first term as a massive failure when you look at what he's already done this first 4 weeks. And then, like, if you're trying to save this country, you need to do what he's doing, and he's doing it, and that is all the respect in the world for me. And obviously we're 4 weeks into it, so we can't go crown him the best president ever. But I'm saying, if you look at what's going on and if you play this out for the next 4 years, and it's going to be like this, it's going to be a roller coaster. But if he continues on this path, I think he might be the best president we've ever had.
Well, he's got a long way to go. There's a lot of real estate between here and surpassing Jefferson, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard to get there, but I think because he is a lame duck, and I think he's so angry about what happened to him that he's actually doing this. The biggest thing that Trump can do at this point, look, he might have the opportunity for 2 more judges. And if he has the opportunity for 2 more judges, that's going to give him, 6 that he'll have appointed of the 9? Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at Clarence Thomas, who's in his late or early 80s. He could be retiring. Sotomayor, people, you got to have to remember, too, she's like 82.
Is she really that old?
Yeah, and so, the average Supreme Court justice doesn't last much longer. And so, there's a potential for 2. I think Clarence Thomas at the very end, depending on the Senate makeup, will retire.
Oh, she's 70. She's 70. Stop with the fake news.
She's not that old. Or
she
not that
is.
young.
I'm looking on Wikipedia right now.
Is Clarence Thomas 80 then?
Oh, yeah, he's older.
Yeah, and Samuel Alito is 74.
Yeah.
And Alito would be more likely to step down since he's a conservative.
You're right. You're right. So I think his legacy is going to be in the courts. I don't necessarily think it's going to be cutting $50 billion here. I mean, it's great to see that he cuts that, Jake. But as you rightly pointed out, that's the size of the Minnesota budget. But as then I'll rightly point out, that's out of like $4 trillion budget, which is nothing.
He might be ending one of the most deadly wars in our modern history, though, and he's solving some bit of the Middle East dilemma. He's literally, we're seeing soldiers end up on the border right now. Mexico's putting up soldiers on the opposite side of the border. You can't undermine the fact that we have this woke culture right now. The leftists, it's a cult. It's just crazy. And he's taking huge stabs at that, which, once again, like, that's a big problem. And, the other thing that he won't get a lot of credit for, because it's hard to tell just how bad Kamala would have been, but like literally standing up for the First Amendment, like Kamala was a massive threat to that. So
I hired Stephen Miller for his first job on the Hill, and it's just so awesome to see where he's at now. But he took an interest to what I had an interest in, which was national security and illegal immigration at the time. What's funny about Mexico is the reason they don't want to put their troops on the border is because it affects their I don't want to say repatriation of money because it's American money, but one of the biggest parts of Mexico's economy, $1 billion a year, comes back to families from illegals working here in cash. $1 billion a year is remitted back to Mexico. And so if you remember during the Obama administration, we had all these caravans coming up from Guatemala, and they were coming up and across the border. Mexico actually built a wall on their southern border. They don't call it a wall, but look at it. It's a damn wall. And the reason
I know, because it's the Mexican term for wall.
Right, because what they didn't want, Jake, was they didn't want these Guatemalans and others coming up, cashing in on their good time of remitting American money. And so now they actually have to do something about it.
Right.